Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you are very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. Those of us who have read Philippa Gregory's Cousins' War series and or have watched the TV and films based upon those books may well remember a plot point that showed a curse being enacted by Elizabeth Woodville, who is the Queen of Edward IV, and her daughter Elizabeth of York, who goes on to become Henry VII's Queen. The plot is aimed against those who are responsible for killing the princes in the Tower, and it was supposed to mean that their male descendants would die or not be born, leaving the line with only female heirs. As events unfold and secrets are revealed, it becomes clear through this series that it will be the Tudor line that will be affected. The suggestion of there being some curse against the Tudor dynasty is not, however, something that only exists in contemporary historical fiction, because it also formed part of testimony that was used ultimately to convict and execute a duke for treason. In 1521, it was asserted that Edward Stafford, 3rd Duke of Buckingham, in addition to listening to and having faith in prophecies that said that he would be king one day, it was also claimed that, as C.S.L. Davies puts it, quote, the Tudor family lay under God's curse, as a result of the judicial murder of the Earl of Warwick in 1499, when Buckingham had been a member of the jury. That explained Henry VIII's failure to produce a male heir. But why might an onlooker, such as the Duke of Buckingham, take a look at the Tudors and assume that their dynasty was cursed? Well, perhaps we could explore the deaths of this family to see if they seem to be particularly unfortunate to us. Let's take a look. The Tudor entrance into the English royal family occurred when Owen Tudor married Catherine of Valois in the late 1420s or early 1430s. She was the widow of King Henry V and was the mother of King Henry VI. The date we're talking about here is obscured because this relationship and marriage occurred in secrecy, and that's partly due to Catherine's desire to retain her position, her wealth and her lands as Dowager Queen, things that may be diminished or threatened by her remarrying. And this threat was likely made all the greater by the gulf that existed in the newlywed social status. Owen, despite being at court, was not wealthy nor was he titled. And thus, this marriage of a Dowager Queen also did not receive the required permission needed for it to take place. The number of children born to Catherine and Owen is disputed. There are references to there having been an Owen, perhaps known as Edward for some reason, who may have been a monk and then died soon afterwards of unknown causes. And there is also reference to a Margaret, or perhaps a Catherine, who reportedly became a nun and also died young from causes unknown. The confirmed children of this relationship were Edmund, who was born in around 1430, and Jasper, born in around 1431. Although some members of the court certainly knew about the marriage from around May 1432, it was not widely known about until after Catherine's death on the 3rd of January 1437. She was 35 years old. Michael Jones ponders Catherine's cause of death, writing that she was, quote, perhaps weakened by successive pregnancies, or by the congenital frailty that afflicted so many members of the Valois family. Catherine's last months were passed, in the words of her will, in grievous malady, in the which I have been long and yet am troubled and vexed. She died at Bermondsey Abbey, where she had previously retired to, and she was buried in Westminster Abbey. Around a decade and a half after the death of Catherine of Valois, the lives of her children and her husband would be transformed, in some cases irrevocably, by the conflict that became known as the Wars of the Roses. Owen, Edmund and Jasper were, after all, respectively, the stepfather and half-brothers to King Henry VI. In 1455, Edmund Tudor had married the 12-year-old Margaret Beaufort, She was a fabulously wealthy heiress who could claim descent from King Edward III. This descent came through his son, John of Gaunt's relationship with Catherine Swynford. I have got a video on that topic which I will be leaving linked. When Yorkist troops seized Carmarthen Castle, Edmund Tudor was captured and imprisoned. Then, shortly after his release, he contracted and ultimately died of plague. At the start of November 1456, he was in his mid-20s. He left behind his teenage bride, who was at that point around 6 months pregnant. Edmund and Margaret's son Henry, later King Henry VII, would be delivered following a traumatic labour on the 28th of January 1457. Little Henry's grandfather, Owen Tudor, would not have long to dandle his grandson adoringly on his knee, because following the Lancastrian defeat at the Battle of Mortimer's Cross, Owen and his troops retreated with the Yorkists in hot pursuit. They managed to reach Hereford, because it was there that Owen was captured and beheaded on the 2nd of February 1461. He was probably in his early 60s. Owen's last surviving child by Catherine of Valois, Jasper Tudor, would outlive his father by more than 30 years. He died of unknown, but most likely natural causes, on the 21st of December 1495. He was in his mid-60s. Jasper lived long enough to watch his nephew become king. Indeed, Jasper was a prominent figure at King Henry VII's coronation on the 30th of October 1485. He also lived long enough to see his nephew marry Elizabeth of York on the 18th of January 1486, and then to see 4 of that couple's 7 children be born. In order, they were Arthur, Margaret, Henry, and Elizabeth. The last of these, Elizabeth, would die a few months before her great-uncle Jasper, on the 14th of September 1495. She died from an unknown cause. She was 3 years old. Her parents, though, would have 3 more children: Mary, Edmund, and Catherine. As we can see, Mary and Edmund were born before the 28th of November 1499. That was the date of Edward, Earl of Warwick's execution. If the later allegations made about the Duke of Buckingham were in fact correct, then this would have been the moment that he believed that the sons of the Tudor dynasty were cursed. I do wonder if we will see any evidence of that curse in the lives and deaths of the Tudors that we look at from this point, perhaps in comparison to those that have gone before. Let me know your thoughts in the chat and comments. Little Edmund died on the 19th of June 1500, of unknown causes, but possibly from plague. He was 1 year old. A little under 2 years later, Arthur, Prince of Wales, who had recently married the Spanish Infanta Catherine of Aragon, and was residing with her at Ludlow when he fell ill. It is suggested that he might have contracted the sweating sickness, which was possibly exacerbated by a pre-existing infection of tuberculosis. In either case, he died on the 2nd of April 1502 when he was 15 years old. His mother, Elizabeth of York, would fall pregnant again fairly soon after her eldest son's death. At the start of the next year, while she was at the Tower of London though, she did go into premature labour. Her daughter Catherine was born on the 2nd of February 1513. Sadly, she died within a few days of her birth. And then Elizabeth also died from complications following this birth on the 11th of February 1503, which just happened to be her 37th birthday. Rosemary Horrocks points out that, quote, less than a year previously, Henry's court astrologer had forecast that she, Elizabeth of York, would live to be at least 80, and in humanist circles her death became a paradigm of the fallibility of astrology. It is thought that King Henry VII's death was the result of an illness which he had been afflicted with for some time, an illness that had recurring bouts of being particularly symptomatic. It may well have been tuberculosis. He died on the 21st of April 1509 when he was 52 years old. His mother Margaret Beaufort would die a little over 2 months later on the 29th of June 1509. As Michael K. Jones and Malcolm G. Underwood explain, this did allow her to attend the joint coronation of her grandson, Henry VIII, and his bride, Catherine of Aragon. However, quote, the festivities and fare of the occasion may well have been too much for her, but her elaborate will of January 1509, and the signature of her accounts by her appointed executors after that date, indicate that her health had become increasingly frail. She was 66 years old at the time of her death. The new queen, Catherine of Aragon, was pregnant around 6 times between 1509 and 1518. 2 of these pregnancies would result in infants that lived long enough to name. One was a boy, Henry, Duke of Cornwall. The court erupted into joyful celebrations in the immediate aftermath of his birth. This joust, which is depicted in the Westminster tournament roll, was hosted in his honour. Henry, Duke of Cornwall, lived for just 52 days. He died of unknown causes on the 22nd of February, 1511. As we know, the pursuit of a surviving male heir would consume Henry VIII for much of the rest of his reign. Henry VIII was said to have had a favourite sister, and that was Mary. After a short marriage to the ageing King of France, she tested her brother's love and patience by marrying his best friend Charles Brandon. This couple would have 4 children. Their first son, Henry, died of unknown causes at around the age of 6 in 1522. They would go on to have another son, whom they also called Henry, who also sadly died of unknown causes at around 10 or 11 years old in 1534. This Henry would outlive his mother by less than a year. Mary Tudor's health had reportedly suffered for some years before her death. It has been variously suggested that she had a heart condition, tuberculosis, or maybe cancer. She died on the 25th of June, 1533. She was 37 years old. In addition to those 2 sons called Henry, Mary would also give birth to 2 daughters by Charles Brandon. Frances, who lived to the age of 42. She died on the 21st of November, 1559, following some months of ill health of unknown cause. Frances gave birth to 3 children who lived past childhood. All of them were daughters. The eldest, arguably the most famous, was Lady Jane Grey, who was executed on the 12th of February 1554, when she was around 17 years old. Her sister, Lady Catherine Grey, died at age 27, on the 26th of January 1568. She may have died from tuberculosis, or it's possible that she might have starved herself to death after being imprisoned on the orders of her queen and kinswoman, Elizabeth I. Catherine had, she claimed, secretly married Edward Seymour, Earl of Hertford. Certainly, she had 2 sons by him. However, their marriage would be examined and subsequently deemed to have never actually taken place, which in turn did render both her sons illegitimate. Her eldest boy, Edward, died of unknown causes at the age of 50 on the 13th of July 1612. Edward Seymour's descendants continue to sit on the throne today. Her younger son, Thomas, also died of unknown causes, this time on the 8th of August 1600. He was 37 years old and he was married, but nevertheless he died without issue. Jane and Catherine Grey's youngest sister, Mary, is described, I think very unkindly, as, quote, little, crook-backed and very ugly. However unpleasant and unfeeling this description is, it may indicate that Mary could have had congenital physical differences that may in turn have affected her health and potentially even contributed to her death. Lady Mary Grey had no children. She died at around 33 years old on the 20th of April 1578. The Grey sisters did have an aunt, Eleanor. She died of unknown causes at the age of 28 in 1547. And she had 1 child that survived infancy, who was named Margaret. Margaret lived to be 56. She also died of unknown causes, this time on the 28th of September 1596. Margaret had 2 sons who survived into adulthood, both of whom fathered children who also survived into adulthood. With that being said, there was certainly a paucity of sons in this generation and in the generations that followed. which meant that ultimately titles either moved sideways to cousins or had to pass through daughters onto their sons. Henry VIII's elder sister Margaret lived to be almost 52. She died a little more than a month before her birthday on the 18th of October 1541. As an account of her passing explains that she, quote, took a palsy, it has been suggested that she died following a stroke. By her first husband, James IV of Scots, Margaret would have 6 children, only one of whom would survive infancy. And his father died while he was still an infant, at which point he became James V of Scots. James V's second wife was Mary of Guise. She bore him 2 sons, who both died in infancy, and a daughter, Mary, who would be his sole surviving legitimate heir at the point of his death on the 14th of December 1542. It is possible that James V contracted dysentery and cholera, and that is what caused his death. He was 30 years old. As for little Mary, she was just a few days old when she became Queen of Scots. Mary lived to be 44. She was executed on the 8th of February 1587. Her only surviving child, James VI of Scots, later James I of England too, died aged 58 on the 27th of March 1625. As Eleanor Evans points out, quote, official sources had it that the king died of a stroke and attack of dysentery, complicated by malaria or typhus, which were endemic in England in the early 17th century. James and his wife Anne would lose many of their children in infancy. Just 3 would reach adulthood. There was the eldest, Henry, who was the heir to his father, and he died at just 18 years old, most probably from typhoid fever on the 6th of November 1612. There was also a daughter, Elizabeth, and she would live to be 65. She died of suspected pneumonia on the 13th of February 1662. Her children included Sophia of Hanover, about whom I have made a video, because she was the matriarch of the Hanoverian monarchs of Britain. James VI and I would be succeeded by his second surviving son, Charles, as Charles I. He was executed at the age of 48 on the 30th of January 1649. His son would be restored to become King Charles II, but he would die without legitimate issue at age 54 on the 6th of February 1685. Charles II's cause of death may have been a stroke, an infection of his brain, or perhaps kidney failure. His brother James would rule after him until he was ultimately deposed by his nephew and daughter, who were, as we have discussed on this channel already, married to each other. James's male heir, and those male heirs that followed, were then barred from the throne through a legal change that would prohibit Roman Catholics from ever becoming monarch. James's daughters, first Mary, then Anne, both died without surviving children, and it was this fact that allowed the accession of the House of Hanover to occur. Henry VIII's sister, Margaret Tudor, did remarry following the death of her husband, James V. By her second husband, she had a daughter, Margaret Douglas, and she lived to the age of 62. She died of unknown causes on the 7th of March, 1578. She was predeceased by all of her children, including her 2 sons that did reach adulthood. The eldest of these was Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, second husband to Mary Queen of Scots, father of James VI and I, who was assassinated on the 10th of February 1567 at the age of 21. He had a brother, Charles, who died of an illness, most likely we think tuberculosis, in the April of 1576 when he was around 20. Charles had married the daughter of Bess of Hardwicke, much to the annoyance of the Elizabethan authorities, and by her he had had a daughter named Lady Arbella Stuart, who made her own unapproved marriage for which she was ultimately imprisoned. Arbella died without children, and possibly of starvation, in the Tower of London on the 25th of September 1615. She was almost 40. Now we have come to almost the end. This brings us to explore the deaths of those Tudors who actually sat upon the throne after King Henry VII. His son, Henry VIII, died after around a decade of progressively worsening health, at 55 years old, on the 28th of January 1547. Despite his 6 marriages and his known affairs, Henry only had 4 acknowledged children who lived past infancy. He had a son by his mistress Elizabeth Blount, who would predecease him. Henry Fitzroy died at 17, most likely from tuberculosis, which may perhaps have been complicated by contracting plague. Fitzroy died on or around the 23rd of July 1536. Thus, King Henry VIII was survived by just 3 acknowledged children, 1 son and 2 daughters. He was followed on the throne first by his son, as Edward VI. This boy would fall ill just a few years into his reign. Measles and or smallpox seem to have weakened his previously good health in 1552, and then tuberculosis and or maybe pneumonia potentially led to septicemia, which ultimately resulted in his death on the 6th of July 1553. He was 15 years old. Following that brief attempted reign of Jane Grey, Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon's daughter assumed the throne. Queen Mary I died at 42 years old, on the 17th of November 1558. Her cause of death has been much debated. Suggestions include a death from cancer and or from influenza. Mary was then succeeded by her half-sister, Henry VIII's daughter with Anne Boleyn. Queen Elizabeth I lived to be 69. She died from suspected blood poisoning on the 24th of March 1603. Elizabeth, famed for being England's Virgin Queen, was the last individual of Henry VIII's direct line of descent to sit upon the throne that he had left behind. And while the current royal family can certainly trace its lineage back to this dynasty, the true name itself, arguably because of lack of sons, is consigned to history, at least in a royal context. So what do you think? Do you think Buckingham was right, if indeed he believed it at all? Were the sons of this Tudor line indeed cursed? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video. I'd also love it if you could pop an emoji or a social glyph in the comments too, because that will boost the engagement. The more engagement, the more the video gets shared out, and that should help us to grow our community. I'm thinking, by way of emoji, either something royal or, if it exists, something that makes you think of a curse. Let's see if the YouTube censorship bots will let you do any of that. You can also find me elsewhere on social media. I will leave links to the place you can find me on the internet in my description box. Please do follow me over on some or all of those so we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please share it with your friends. If you like my channel, let some pals know about it. You can tell me about this video in particular by hitting the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel, and if you think you are subscribed, now is the time to have a check, just to make sure you've not been mysteriously unsubscribed against your will. While you are there, checking, subscribing, maybe resubscribing, please do hit the bell icon beside the subscribe button and then select all in the drop-down menu that will appear, and that way YouTube claim they will tell you when I'm next uploaded, but also when I will next be going live, which I do currently around about once a month to talk about the history news. Lots of you send me articles, I collate and collect them all together. We then put them up in a slideshow and we have a chat about them together. It takes around about 2 to 3 hours. It's a good time. You are not going to want to miss it. We have, of course, got our failsafe. Head to my website. I will link that. It's www.katrinamarchant.com. If you head to the contact page, you will find this box. Please put your email address in that box, hit sign up, and that will let me send you out an email once a week to tell you things I've been up to, but also to send you useful links for my content for the coming days. I hope you're going to have a great day whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.